All right. Welcome, everybody, to Distory with Kate and Kirk. My name is Kate, aka Disney Cicerone, and this is my co host, Kirk from Walrus Carp. He is currently in the Magic Kingdom, so if you hear a little bit of extra noise and Disney fun in the background, that is what's going on there. He's going to show us some things as we talk today.
Disney
How's it going, Kirk?
Disney fun is Kate's way of saying an audio nightmare. But I think it's going to be a good episode because we're going to get some. It's going to be great. You'll love it. Just trust me. All right, where are we headed?
So we are talking about something that I have wanted to talk about for a long time.
I thought you by accident.
And that is Western River Expedition. So if you have not heard of Western River Expedition, that's because it never existed, but it should have existed. And you might feel very sad that we never got it after this episode, and if so, I'm very sorry. But we're going to talk about Western River Expedition. And what it was a ride that was kind of going to be Pirates of the East, because they figured that when they were making Disney World, they're like, we don't need pirates over here because it's too close to the Caribbean. They already have a whole bunch of pirate horror and legends. They're not going to be interested in pirates in Walt Disney World. That's what the Imagineers assumed. So Marc Davis said, my feeling kind of
Yeah,
was,
who wants the
take...
same e-ticket?
Yeah.
They already did it once.
My feeling kind of was, why take pirates to Florida when they've been promoting pirates for several hundred years down there and everything's kind of pirate named? So I thought it would be kind of great if we took west to the east. So that's the kind of concept behind Western River Expedition, was going to be, let's bring the flavor of the Old West to the East Coast. Now, we'll get into why it didn't get built later, because it's actually really, really complicated, but the main reason why pirates exist is because when Walt Disney World opened, there was no Pirates of the Caribbean, and everybody in America had watched Walt Disney sell this ride on television on a Sunday night, and they're like, why isn't Pirates here? And they said, where are the pirates? And Disney was like, oh no, like they expected this ride to be here and it's not. So they started scrambling to put things together for this ride, and I'll get a little bit more into the details of that later. But then they made up these buttons, which are so great, that say the pirates are coming, because the cast members were asked so often, where are the pirates, that they started wearing these buttons that say the pirates are coming to Walt Disney World. And they did come in 1973 is when Pirates finally did arrive. I do have some pictures of it getting built. Let me make sure that was flipped.
Imagineers weren't really happy about this, though. They wanted no part of building another Pirates. They already did. You know what's funny is, right? Like, you get all this. It's kind of like a band, right? A band gets a greatest hit, and you have to play it every night because that's what people came for. Well, Pirates is one of those. It's the greatest hit. It needs to be played, and Imagineers were kind of not into that. They wanted a new experience, something that was different. I don't blame them. I understand that.
Yep, Marc Davis was really upset. Not only because he had to do Pirates again, which he didn't want to do, but also because he didn't get to build his Western River Expedition, which was just quite an amazing ride. So I don't know if you want to kind of meander in Frontierland area / Riverfront, Kirk, while I chat about this next part. So in the 1950s, there was this fascination with all things Western, right? We've got Davy Crockett was a huge giant hit for Disney when it premiered on television, and then everybody in the world wanted their coonskin cap, and they actually single-handedly brought back some of the fur trade because everybody wanted a coonskin cap because of Davy Crockett. They found an old warehouse that the Chinese had abandoned, I guess, in California, that was full of fur. And then they started making these coonskin caps for Davy Crockett and sold them across America. It was a wild ride. So all these things Western. We had John Wayne. We had the Lone Ranger. It was the highest rated television show. Children played, cowboys and Indians. We don't really approve of that term anymore, but that was what happened in the 50s. So this kind of Western thing was huge in the 50s. And so this particular ride kind of capitalized on that movement of the obsession with the West. So then so this didn't start out actually as a ride for Walt Disney World. It was actually going to be for the St. Louis concept. If you're familiar with that, they were going to have the world's first indoor theme park in St. Louis that Walt Disney would have built. It would have been located on the banks of the Mississippi River by the Jefferson National Memorial in St. Louis. And it was going to be called Walt Disney's Riverfront Square. But
It was one of the coolest concepts, especially because of the indoor aspect. It was multiple city blocks, and there's great concept art of all of the attractions and things that were there. So it went a little bit further than just like, oh, this would be an interesting idea. They literally were starting to work on the logistics and attractions for it.
Yeah, I think I've got one picture of it. I don't think it actually shows the ride I'm talking about, but this is, you can see it had the Circarama Theater, and it has it says the Old St. Louis Gaslight Plaza in the middle. This was just some of the diagrams for how it would have been laid out. Now, so the ride that they were going to put in there was called the Lewis and Clark River Expedition. If you're familiar with Lewis and Clark, they were explorers that were trying to find the Northwest Passage, right? Being an Oregonian, they came and they hung out here for a winter. So I went to Fort Clatsop on field trips as a youngin. So Lewis and Clark is big here in Oregon, but they were explorers that were just making their way across the U.S. and they have some really great journals too. So they were going to make a whole ride that was based on this journey to the West, right? So, but what happened was Walt chose not to move forward with the Riverfront Square project, and it's actually kind of a funny story. It's likely for a couple of reasons it didn't happen, but one of the likely ones was they had a cocktail party the night before they signed the paperwork to actually make this happen. And at the cocktail party, August Busch Jr. of Anheuser-Busch said to Walt, he said, "Any man who thinks he can design an attraction that is going to be a success in the city and not serve beer or liquor ought to have his head examined." And that was the wrong thing to say to Walt, because Walt didn't believe in having liquor available to the general public in his parks. He did drink himself, and he did have it in his private clubs and areas, but he basically was a huge insult to Walt, who had already not put alcohol inside Disneyland. So he got on the plane, and he never went back, and he never signed the documents, and that's how that never went down. So that's a whole.
I wonder if that's why Busch Gardens gets started.
Could be. Yeah.
30 minutes.
And they're just like, we're going to have alcohol at our park. Yeah, I'll have to do something.
Yeah, like you literally can go and tour the breweries.
Yeah. You're super loud, Kirk.
Yeah, I'm really.
Whew.
It's because I have my hands over the mic, because otherwise we would get the most awful wind noise.
Oh,
It is very windy.
Okay. Gotcha. Thank you. All right. So we had this riverfront concept that kind of fell through, and we had this Lewis and Clark River Expedition concept that never got used, right? So it wasn't developed for Walt Disney World. It was actually for the St. Louis idea that this kind of water boat ride through an expedition kind of came about. So now we're getting to Thunder Mesa. Kirk, do you know much about Thunder Mesa? I don't want to talk over you if you know some things. Kirk?
You're good. Sorry, it was getting real choppy for me. You're good.
Okay. I might just keep going if that's okay with you.
No, please do, because it's honestly it's hard in this specific area because there's not great Wi-Fi just around the riverfront. If there's something specific that you want me to point to or look at, let me know.
We just why don't you go towards Big Thunder, because we're going to talk about that area over there.
Okay.
Might help you out a little bit too. So for Walt Disney World, they were originally going to have an entire area that was going to be called Thunder Mesa. That was in the original plans. I have some really great, like the very, very, very beginning of Frontierland. There was like a whole place that was mocked up for Thunder Mesa. It was kind of from the beginning meant to be this entire mountain area that would not hold one attraction but three of them. And it was actually like, if this had been built, it would have been spectacular. And I'm honestly quite upset that we never gotten it. I have a picture of where it's actually. I'll come back to this one because this one will point out some things in it. But let me see if I can find where it is actually located. So if you look at the Rivers of America, you can see this is where this entire complex would have been. So it's now where Big Thunder Mountain is today. That is why there's this bend in the Rivers of America, was because it was supposed to accommodate Thunder Mesa. Now, Thunder Mesa, get back to my notes here. It was going to be 225 feet high, so it was going to be a part of the mountain range there in Disney World. And the show space would have had a runaway mine train, a canoe-themed log flume attraction, and then on the bottom level was going to be Western River Expedition. So this was like a massive complex. And if you're thinking like, like a canoe log flume ride, that sounds an awful lot like Splash Mountain. And if you're thinking that, well, you'd be right, because it's kind of hard to see, but you would crash down this waterfall. At the end, you would go down like some whitewater rapids, and that was the end of the ride. So that was the precursor to Splash Mountain, was Thunder Mesa.
Why does it look like Splash Mountain looks like a painting right now? Like, I'm here, and it looks like I'm taking a picture. It doesn't look real at all.
It does.
Like, is that fake? What is this? It is very weird.
I won't talk too much about the water ride because we're going to get to a lot of the other things. But you can see this is where the water would have flown through, just like kind of like Splash Mountain. These little people in canoes, and then let's see if there's a.
Wait, how long's the wait?
And then. Okay, so in Thunder Mesa, there was also going to be something called a Mesa Terrace, which would have been kind of like the Blue Bayou, if you're familiar with Disneyland. It would have been like, it was a restaurant that overlooked the town of Thunder Mesa, which was kind of in the front. So this is what it would look like. A little town of Thunder Mesa, and then people would eat. A train would by every so often, and they would have this kind of beautiful sunsetty atmosphere to eat, which I think is a huge loss for Disney World.
That would have been amazing. Yeah, when you think about it, over here at Frontierland, without Pecos, we have nothing, right? There's nothing over here. That's why I'm please, put an eatery right there in that briar patch. It used to be a gift shop, just a small little thing. Quick service. I'm okay.
It always feels like, it makes sense though, that why Big Thunder always feels like it's just kind of like tacked on to the end, because it wasn't supposed to be just kind of like just one ride. It was supposed to be 3 rides plus a restaurant and like shopping space and stuff. It was supposed to be a whole complex, and it just never got there.
Well, how about our blue sky concept of potentially what is beyond that? Is that Encanto for some reason? Do you know what I mean? Like all those D23 things. It would have been nice if they had expanded Frontierland.
And you can see here, that's where the runaway train one is, down there at the bottom, and then there's the canoes going down the white water like Splash Mountain up there. So, and then Western River Expedition. So Western River Expedition was on the bottom layer of this. I love the way that Marc Davis described this whole thing. He said, this would have been more like riding through a musical comedy on the Old West, such as Oklahoma, the musical, or Annie Get Your Gun. So everything I approached with this was from the standpoint of doing it in that manner and not worrying about the fact that these things look like sound stages. So we're talking about Western River Expedition. I thought we could do some very brilliant things with color throughout this whole thing. It was as lavish as the pirate ride. It would have been a ride through on a boat, and it was all taking place in the Wild West. Again, pretty fanciful stuff, but with gags and business throughout. So, Marc Davis was the principal designer of Western River Expedition. This was kind of his baby. I would say it's largely Marc Davis that came up with all these concepts, with Mary Blair assisting for her color work. And I have, this is a great book. If you don't have this, it's a 2-volume set. It's super heavy. But Marc Davis, in his own words, Imagineering the Disney Theme Parks. This has so much of his concept art in it, including Thunder Mesa. There's another picture of the sketch. And then he's also got the models of Thunder Mesa there.
This was the one that got away, in my opinion. Out of all attractions that like never happened, this was the one that got away for Walt Disney World.
Yeah. Why don't I work at Disney? That's a great question. I don't work at Disney because I love working for myself. So, no offense, Michael. I love Disney, so, but I enjoy my free time. It would have been a 10 to 12 minute boat ride. There was 3 ride buildings. This is not going to be easy to see or hold up, but gosh, I don't have my usual space. This is the 3 buildings that were original concept for it. This would have been on the bottom of Thunder Mesa, so it's level. And it's hard to see. Let me see if I can pull it up on my other picture. But there would have actually been a whole diorama that Marc Davis developed these really cute, like, bears for. Like gag bears, like rubbing up on trees and things like that. And it would have been where the Walt Disney World Railroad would have gone through. So there would have been a diorama for the Walt Disney World Railroad. I tell you, it's just heartbreaking that we didn't get any of it. Let me see if I can find a closer picture of that for you.
I mean, they could have done pirates too. Just saying.
Yeah, they could. They could have done it. There's some overlap though. And well, there's some interesting things about pirates I will get to that it's pretty interesting. Maybe I can just make this bigger. This is it's kind of hard to see. But do you see that black box? If you see the window in it, that's where the train tracks were, behind that kind of black box. And then that window would have peeked into the ride. So that's where the train went by. So, okay. So each of these show buildings, they were really big. They were all together. It was 135,000, almost 136,000 square feet. So not a small ride, and lots of animatronics in this ride as well. So it would have been one of the most expensive, complex, and elaborate attractions ever created by Disney. And so it was also thought to be a contrast to Pirates' like warmth, or Pirates' coolness. It was more of a warm-toned ride, so it had a lot of rich sunsets and let me see if I can find the Mary Blair art for you. But it was meant to be more of a warm-toned ride, as an echo to Pirates. So in your case, Kirk, very much like, I love that you have that up, because that is exactly what this town looked like. Check this out. This is what the town looked like inside the ride. That color work is very much came from Mary Blair's concept, which is here. Oh, let me see. This one. See, she had this concept of doing like the blue with the red on top. So that came from Mary Blair. And they just carried it over to Big Thunder, which I think is fascinating. So those colors are actually taken directly from Western River Expedition. I feel like I'm talking a lot. I'm sorry. Am I talking too much?
No. You're talking the perfect amount.
Okay. I'm glad you're showing all the things. That's great. Little ambiance for you. Okay, so one thing John Hench said, what they learned from Pirates, is they said, we've learned from Pirates and Small World. In Pirates, there is too much action, so nobody hears the music. With this new project, we learned how to keep a vast area in musical sync. We eliminated crosstalk. It would be the first class Broadway play with 300 characters. So essentially, this was like what they called what this like swan song. That's what they called this for Marc Davis. They said this was like they took all the things that they didn't do right in the other rides and they were going to fix it and do it right in this one. It's just like heartbreaking. So
Yeah, I mean, he kind of deserved this attraction. Like, not for nothing, he deserved it.
yeah, he did. And it was largely, I would say, this kind of going away and also them adjusting the time of retirement at WED is kind of what pushed him out. He started like making concepts that they just didn't use. Like he has some amazing concepts for attractions. They're just like, he's the old guy. Like we're not going to use his stuff anymore. So yeah, it's sad. That's kind of how he just ended his career. Oh, sorry. Hold on my cord. So let's just go through the ride real quick just to show what it would have looked like. This is so, I'm not home, so this is everything in weird places. I'm like, where's all my stuff? Okay.
Is it weird I'm just recognizing you're not in the closet?
I'm not. I'm at my dad's house. So,
Oh, okay.
because, yeah, my son has a competition, and so I need to be in Portland today, so... Yeah. But I'm going to fly out of Portland, so it works out. Anyway, so let's go through Western River Expedition. How would it have looked? So you would have entered through a mine shaft. It was an ore mine shaft. And then you would have gone into the place where you would load is not a picture I have a picture of. It would have been like a great, I have this one. It would have been like a big sunset area in a canyon. And there would have been this natural arch bridge that you walk over to the loading area. And in the background would be music playing like old Western music, kind of like what we're hearing now. Very similar to that. And the soundtrack would have been kind of this old Hollywood Western style. So Marc Davis said, I wanted to have a tune that keeps one beat through the whole show, and then we double it for the more exciting part of the ride.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. They also had...
What did Elliot say anything about that style? I don't know if you told him about it.
I haven't had time to talk to him, so he hasn't heard any of this yet. He'll hear it eventually. We haven't seen each other. He's been so busy. His semester started for school, so he's doing that. This one, I think you're going to like this one, Kirk. And I feel like there's a nod to this in Big Thunder that I finally figured out, okay? Because I've been wondering about the owl in Big Thunder. Do you know the owl that I'm talking about?
Yeah.
So I think in Disney World it's earlier. At Disneyland it's for sure at the end of the ride. I don't know if that's in Disney World too. But
no, it's like more towards the beginning, like where kind of like in between Tumbleweed.
So there was going to be an owl that would narrate the beginning of the ride, kind of give you like the safety spiel, and his name would have been called Hoot Gibson. The Owl Guide. Because we like birds as guides. That's like a common theme, right? So this is not a really dark picture of him. There's the audio animatronic. There's some more sketches of owls that... Oh, not that side, sorry. More sketches of owls that he did. But Hoot Gibson would have narrated the ride for us. And I do have... I don't know. I might dig up his audio in a bit, but... Okay, so you would get into a wooden boat. There would be a wooden boat launch, and then there would just be a stream splashing nearby, and then you would see these like giant Western dime novels on your way out, which is so funny because they don't like. This is kind of, isn't that interesting?
Yeah, why would they have done those?
I don't know. I guess they're trying to set the scene. They're like, you're in the Old West now. Like these old novels, all these old stories.
Weird.
I know.
It kind of reminds me of like, I get that that Toy Story Mania has that, but I always thought that they were. I get it's in Andy's room, but it was always weird to me,
Yeah.
like the book selection choice.
Yeah. So they had these giant books, and then you go into a, okay, this is probably going to sound familiar to anybody who knows Disneyland. You go into a cavern with stalactites that slowly start to resemble characters. You got that in Disney World too, right? So if
Yeah,
you're
I
in
mean, technically a
Pirates,
hidden Mickey, but that's it.
no, you have the skull, don't you? Isn't that in Disney
Oh,
World?
in Pirates we have
In
the skull.
Pirates,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm at the Pirates. So
Oh,
you
sorry.
have these like, I should have been more, yeah, but they slowly start to resemble things. So if you know in Pirates of the Caribbean, where they slowly start to resemble skulls and things, well, that comes from this concept of going into an area with these stalactites that slowly start to resemble characters. As Marc Davis put it, he said, after boarding the boat, we enter a deep, narrow canyon. The canyon leads into a low, wide cavern of mysterious beauty. The light is low key. Stalactites and stalagmites are lit with colored light. The stalactites drip water. Recorded water will play our musical theme. So that was from 1968. And then we enter into a desert at dusk. Kirk, you're gonna love this. This was like, okay. Well, first of all, there's the cacti that were like pipe organ singing cacti.
Oh my gosh, those are great. It reminds me of like the Muppets had that style like cactus a couple
I
of
know, like
times,
look
like
at
with
these
puppets.
these guys. They make me so happy. But so they would have had these singing cacti that made tonal sounds with like pipe organ like mouths, and then oh my gosh, this like totally was the best. They had buffalo with prairie dogs. Now, does that remind you of anything?
Now, with the hooves of the mighty buffalo. Yeah,
That was
living with the land.
that was lifted from this. So the
Oh,
prairie
that's
dogs and
cool.
buffalo were lifted from Western River Expedition. It shows up in so many rides. So they had the prairie dogs would squeak, and then their squeaks would be recorded and then tuned to a scale so that it was all in harmony with all the music that was going on. And I love how Marc Davis put this. He said, I call these experience rides. You're moving down the river, and the tableau of people and animals are on the riverbanks. And even though they must hold a particular position, you are creating different forms because you're seeing them from different viewpoints. So, experience rides. I think that's interesting. Kirk found a cactus. Oh gosh. Okay, so you're in the desert, it's sunset, you're enjoying the peaceful ambiance of the desert. And then you, of course, run into some Mexican banditos robbing a stagecoach, warning you that they'll meet you again downriver. So there's a couple different versions of this, and the funny part about this is the horses. Here's the banditos. The horses have little like bandanas on them. Let's see if I can find a better one. Check this out. Because they said they
This,
weren't funny enough, so they added like bandanas to the horses.
yeah, this is like very good sight gag, classic Marc Davis.
And then you can also see, so this is Mary Blair's color work. You can see here on the top is Mary Blair's color concept, and then this is the final concept. So he took her colors directly and applied them to this scene. So you went through the desert, now you saw the banditos, and now the music is taking a minor key, and then the cowboys start singing to their cattle, and he said the note was like tumbling tumbleweed. And then tumbling tumbleweed, if you're familiar with that song. Here's a great concept art of the cowboys singing to their cattle. As you do, with a guitar, and they sing along with you. I know, Mary Blair's color was amazing. I agree. Like, she's such a brilliant artist. The coyotes would howl at the moon. You had cowboys around a campfire and also a chuck wagon. I think there's so much concept art for this, guys. I could show it to you for hours. So I'm trying to just be selective here, so we're not here all night. And then you enter a fictional town. It's Saturday night in the town of Dry Gulch. So there's a lot going on in Dry Gulch because it's a party, which is, we've got kind of like this Western facade here in Frontierland, but this is even more so. They had a kind of a gunfight going on. There was people. I really love. There's so many characters here. So there's the woman high kicking this dude's hat, which is really fun. And then
It reminds me of like Hoop-Dee-Doo. That still exists.
yes. And then lots of guys. This guy's like a little bit shy to talk to this lady. There was also there was a whole bank robbery going on. There's this guy that's up on his horse on the roof. And then there's like a woman that is like holding her son's ears so like he can't hear all the words that are coming out of their mouths, which I think is hilarious. They also had a snake oil salesman, which I kind of wonder if that is a precursor to Professor Phineas Flump's snake oil salesman storyline. I wonder if they lifted it from that. Because it seems like they might have.
Yeah, I mean, that concept of a Western salesperson, though, is always like a charlatan salesperson that's a pretty common trope.
It is, for sure. So I just say that would be like, I just wonder if there could be a connection there, but they could have just taken it from anywhere.
Well, it'd be nice if there was.
I know. But I'm not saying for sure there is, though. Don't come after me if you're like, that wasn't the thing. So they had also.
I'm gonna rush the comments and be like, this Cicerone is making up. She doesn't even know the mansion. By the way, if anybody listen to you talk about the mansion like you did today, like it's unequivocal. You are the historian of the mansion.
Oh, thanks, Kirk. There's a lot of people that know more than me about the mansion. Oh, sorry. See, I tell you, real life, friends, real life.
This is a real range of emotions tonight.
Oh my gosh, that was wild. Sorry about that. That was me trying to adjust to having my headphones are wired. Okay, so they have all this stuff going on in town. There's also a scene that was lifted out of a movie called For a Few Dollars More by Sergio Leone. That was a guy getting shaved, like a shave in the barber shop. It's in the tonsorial parlor is where he's getting shaved, and then like a gunfight kind of like pops up, and so he has to get up and like defend himself, which I think is funny. And then I think the piece de resistance for me, and the one that I almost texted you first about, Kirk, is this one. Because this is one of my favorites. It's the mortician at the end of the street, just kind of waiting for his moment. 24-hour service.
24-hour service? And I like it that there's 3 vultures on the top. Which we do get the vultures in Splash, so it's possible. I mean, I know that was American Staying Spurs, but still.
Yeah, I think the vultures, they use them too in Snow White. I mean, the vultures have been around for a long time, but they also use them in Jungle Book, I think has their share of vultures. Vultures are just like, anywhere there's going to be like danger and death, the vultures are there, right? That's just a Disney thing. Okay, so after this, you pass under a bridge out of town. I'm going to try to just keep going here. You pass back into the wilderness. There's some Indian adobe houses, and then they do like this rain dance. There's a great picture of it here. They do this rain dance, which causes flood. And then you're going into this whole area that's covered in water is the next step. So you head up a waterfall.
Big Thunder gets that.
It does. Ugh. And then you head up a waterfall. Now this was fascinating to me because I was like, wait a minute. Marc Davis didn't like going up a waterfall in Pirates,
that makes
right?
no sense.
He nixed it.
Yeah.
Okay. I was like, what's going on here? I was like, this can't be right. So I'm looking at this, and what I've researched is he didn't like the chug 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 action. He didn't like that it was smooth. He hated that about Pirates, that you would go at Disneyland version, you would go up the waterfall and it was like this chugging motion. So why would he have this here? Well, he said a specific complaint about Pirates ending was that you would sit there wondering excuse my language, what the hell to do next. Because there was supposed to be a drop after. That's what the guests are anticipating. They're like, I'm going up, I'm going up, I'm getting ready, I'm putting my hands up, I'm ready, and then you go, and then like at Disneyland, it's like, whoop, like there's no drop after that, and everybody's like, oh. And so when you're on Pirates in Disneyland, you hear parents being like telling their kids like, get ready, it's coming, and then like they laugh when they're just like, just kidding. That happens all the time. So that's what he didn't like about the Pirates ride, was that it was anticlimactic. That was his specific complaint besides the chugging. And so this one would have been different because you would have gone up this waterfall, and at the top of the waterfall, lightning starts and there's a forest fire, and then the Mexican banditos come back. And this is like the height of the action. And then they start like shooting at you, and then you go down a waterfall. So it's like this giant like climactic scene, which is that like basically him fixing that idea of the pirates, because he's like, this just didn't make any sense. And then you come back around to the canyon for unloading. So that's the basis of this ride, and there's so much more. There's literally like 20 pages in this book of concept art for this, so I'm gonna just show you
A couple of folks
have
have been asking for the name of that book. Do you mind just rehashing the title?
Okay, so this is part of a 2-volume set. It's called Marc Davis, in his own words, Engineering the Disney Theme Parks, and it's really heavy, and it's virtually like all the concept art he's ever had, plus a lot of photos. It's the other one is over there, but it's I keep saying it's heavy because I like hurt my wrist this past week, and I'm like, okay, let me try.
Was that from you and the Imagineering story that you hurt your wrist on?
I think it was partially that. And I had so many, this is going to sound really silly, but I had so many videos that went quasi-viral that I had a lot of comments to answer, and I was holding my phone so long texting like this, I have like a repetitive motion injury in both of my wrists. So, kids, use your laptop.
It's the price to pay. It's the price to pay to go viral.
Say, I'm too old. That's what it's saying to me. It's like, nope, you can't do this. I turned 39, and then I'm like, I can't do this anymore. So, okay. So, why was the Western River Expedition not built? Okay, this is a complicated question, because there's a couple different answers to it. One is a popular thing that people say about it. It was the cost was just too high to produce it because they had 300 audio animatronics. But there's all these accounts in this book of this beautiful model they made, which somebody actually stole 28 figures from. I showed you a few of those pictures. Someone actually stole them at WED, and they had to recreate them. They had this gorgeous model completely made that everybody would go out and like ooh and ah over it and be like, I can't wait till they build this. They had it almost like some of the pieces were even in production. Like this one, you can see the sculpture of the animals, the little coyotes, was already in production. And so they said it was the projected cost was extremely high. At the same time, they were at open Space Mountain. Carousel of Progress had moved to Walt Disney World. They had the Star Jets, and that's now the Astro Orbiter, and the People Mover. They also were working on Epcot in Tokyo. All these costs really added up. So they're looking at this giant, land, and they're just like, oh, this just doesn't make sense financially right now. Plus, because they had to pivot and do Pirates, they were just like, well, we already kind of have a ride that's like this. Why would we repeat it? However, when they built the Disney World version, Marc Davis was in charge of that, and he specifically cut out things from Pirates so that it would not be a duplicate of Western River Expedition. So the ghostly caverns, like we have in Disneyland, he cut out almost all of that from this ride, not only to save costs, but so that it wouldn't be a duplicate. He cut out the ramp at the backside going up the waterfall, so that wouldn't be duplicated in Western River Expedition. So if you're ever wondering why Pirates is so lame in Disney World, it's because Marc Davis still wanted to make this attraction. That's really, and budget. Those are the two answers to that. So, what happened was in 1979, they did a groundbreaking for Big Thunder Mountain Railroad because there was kind of these things. They were like, should we revamp Mine Train Through Nature's Wonderland or should we try something new? Tony Baxter proposed, let's do, for Disney World, in this space, Big Thunder Mountain Railroad. But we'll put Western River Expedition, where is it? I think it's on this side. There's a tiny little Conestoga wagon that says, like, Western River Expedition. He said, let's put Western River Expedition, like a sized down version that's a little bit cheaper, attached to it later as like a phase 2 to the project. Well, so they made Big Thunder, and they did put some of these concepts that they had from both Mine Train Through Nature's Wonderland revamp and also Western River Expedition in Big Thunder. But they never got to that second one. And they just decided to put in Big Thunder, and that was that. So the space where Western River Expedition should have been was Big Thunder, where Big Thunder is now. Which is tragic. But true. So, other reasons why it might not have been built, there was also this like Native American component, like, you know, the ideology was changing in America from like using Native Americans for comedy, which was, you know, not so great, to making them more of a, like, let's respect them, which is a good positive change. And so there are some concepts that Marc Davis adjusted because he really wanted to sell this idea. He really wanted to see it happen. So he actually adjusted it so that it was more just cowboys and less like Indians in this whole ride. But it was just real expensive to make. So they didn't end up building it at all, but it did end up in several other places. We already talked about how Listen to the Land, that is now Living with the Land, but it was called Listen to the Land. That was where the buffalo and the prairie dogs ended up. And there was also a proposal for Disneyland for a hill land called Land of Legends between Bear Country and Discovery Bay. Kirk, you're gonna love this one because it's got a little like nod to something. I'm trying to find it here. So this is from WED, and it has an Ichabod Crane dark ride that we never got.
Oh, dude, called it. I called it. This needs to happen. That please get rid of that abomination they call Hall of Presidents and put it in there.
Yeah, they could. It would have been 12,600 square feet.
I wonder, I'd have to look at things that are comparable to get an idea and look at the time period to figure out what it kind of roughly could have looked like and who would have been assigned on the project.
Yeah, well, it was all part of, I think, Tony Baxter, because he was selling Discovery Bay at the same time. If you've been around Distory for any length of time, we've touched on it a little bit. We should probably do a whole episode on it at some point, because it was a land that was proposed for Disneyland that would have been kind of on the backside of Rivers of America, and it would have been all kind of Jules Verne era themed, like inventor, steampunk era themed, and that got nixed as a project.
Well, he still got it in Tomorrowland with Space Mountain and DLP.
Yes, yeah, so a lot of these concepts migrated to Disneyland Paris. Before I move on from this, though, they also had Windwagon Smith Dark Ride, They had at Paul Bunyan Buffeteria, books on legends and myths, an illusion shop, Daniel Boone's Trading Post, and then some more restrooms, which would have been great. And then you can see in the corner here it says Western River Expedition. So that's where that would have come in. It's up in the corner there. So it almost made it to Disneyland instead, but it didn't make it there. That was in 1978. Epcot costs are the ones that really nixed that project because Epcot was expensive. And then in Walt Disney World, there was actually a proposal that's been rumored to have happened that they were going to make another park that was going to be called Frontier Kingdom. And I've only read like this much about it because not much exists out there about it. So it would have been another gate, and it would have been southwest of Seven Seas Lagoon and would have featured Western River Expedition. So it's like they tried to find places to put this, but they didn't find anywhere. This never happened.
Maybe in the future.
Well, in Disneyland Paris, I'm glad you brought that up because when it opened in 1992, Frontierland's fictional town was named Thunder Mesa, which was a tribute to Western River Expedition and the Thunder Mesa we never got at Walt Disney World. Um, the Frontierland is also strongly influenced by Western River Expedition compared to any previous version of Frontierland, and the Phantom Canyon scene of Phantom Manor at Disneyland Paris is derived from the planned scene showing the town of Dry Gulch. So that's where, if you're ever like, this is such a bizarre like graveyard scene to the Haunted Mansion, it's because it was from Western River Expedition. That's where that comes from for Disneyland Paris. And they also had elements from there like bank robbery, the showgirl, the bartender. They're pretty much taken right out of this concept. And then other influences of Western River Expedition, I just have a few more real quick, is Expedition Everest. The backward section of that ride, well, the roller coaster that was planned for Western River Expedition was going to have a backward segment to it. So, not, they say there's no idea is a new one, right? So that's likely where that came from. Also, Worlds of Motion at Epcot, a lot of the scenes ended up in that original ride that were developed by Marc Davis. He just adjusted them to fit the storyline. And then, of course, we also mentioned Living with the Land, the Buffalo, and Prairie Dog scene. So little bits and pieces of this attraction ended up virtually everywhere in almost all of the parks. But we never got it in Disney World, which is heartbreaking for so many reasons. It actually makes me very sad to think about. So
it would have been one of the most amazing attractions that we would have gotten here, hands down.
It would have been on, like Pirates and Haunted Mansion, it would have been like the iconic rides that they just keep forever because you can't duplicate it. And I think we would have all taken to it, especially if they had done the versions where they were a little bit more culturally sensitive to the Native Americans. I think that version would have worked. And I think it would still work, but I don't think they would ever do it just because of how everything's so established now. They would have to demolish large sections.
I don't know. It's such a shame because, well, I don't know. Build it behind Big Thunder.
There's space back there. We've seen it.
There's plenty of space. There's tons of space. Just build it on Tom Sawyer Island. Just demo that whole thing.
There's space. Look at all that space.
There's so much.
Yeah. So that in a nutshell, there's really so much more to Western River Expedition that I didn't even get to. I love this one, though. It's really one of my favorite scenes, and I'm going to show these briefly. You can really see this is the Tom Sawyer rafts is kind of what they're looking for, or from. That's the viewpoint. And you can see this large layout of how beautiful that whole area would have been.
It was gorgeous. It was absolutely gorgeous. And I love that there was a water ride.
And I feel like that's really what is missing from Disney World's like Frontierland. Like, I'm glad if they imagine Frontierland without Splash, like that's really like there's not enough going on over there.
Yeah.
I'm trying to see if I had one more.
I don't know. We're gonna change so much with Tiana's Bayou Adventure. I'm very curious to see what happens to us in the future.
Yeah, I agree. You can see on the model here, that guy in the yellow girl? No, it's a guy. Is leaning next to what would have been Thunder Mesa. This is the original model for Walt Disney World.
I have a question. How are you feeling about Tiana's Palace? Taking over two very iconic eateries in Disneyland.
Gosh, I'm sad about French Market because it's so historic to Walt. If they take out the mosaic inlays that are in the floor that I look for every time I go, I'm going to be very sad. If they remove the espresso machine, they better keep that somehow because that was like a Walt thing. I understand them updating it. French Market does.
New Orleans and coffee works.
Yeah, they have to keep that. They have to. Change is always really hard, and some of the stuff we feel like it should be a museum because Walt is gone. But like you've said many times, it's not a museum. It was never meant to be, and Walt didn't want it to be. So I think he would be okay with it growing and changing and updating. It's just harder for us because we're so familiar with it. So.
Hey, Kate.
What?
I just found something.
What'd you find?
I've never seen this ever. This is at the Polynesian Resort. It's right upstairs. It's an exact replica of it.
Oh, look at that.
Isn't that funny? I've never ever looked up here in this net, and that's right next to Kona Cafe.
Oh, that's neat.
It's identical. One of those sold for auction for quite a bit too.
Is this you're near Pirates, right?
I'm in the gift shop of Pirates. Yeah.
Things they stole from various places.
They looted and plundered that.
In terms of Splash Mountain changing, I think I have a lot of feelings about. I really think it's great to have representation in the parks. I think it's okay to have change. Splash Mountain's so iconic, so that I'm like, it's heartbreaking to think it won't be there anymore because it's so much a part of my youth. But I also think my son had a really good thought, though, because I told him, I was like, yeah, you guys, the last time you went on Splash Mountain was probably the last time you'll ever go on it like that ever again. And he's like, well, I wish they weren't turning it into a princess ride. He's like, it used to be like for everybody, and now it's just like for girls. And I was like, oh, that's sad that he thinks that. Like, obviously it's not. Like, obviously it's for everybody, but that's like, I'm like, Splash Mountain wasn't like targeted towards anybody. It was just kind of for everybody. I understand the problems with the storyline, a lot of the things that happened with all of the Song of the South. I still stand by the fact that Song of the South is where it went, and the first time a black man won an Academy Award, and the fact that we're not letting people see it, I think is wrong. So I think that we should celebrate that person winning that. I think that was a huge move forward. But anyway, went really deep into that. The thing is, like, I think it's okay. I think it's okay.
I think that's appropriate.
I think it's okay to change. I like representation in the parks. I'm 100% for that. I just think change is really hard, and it's a lot of memories for a lot of us. And so I think we're all feeling some grief. And some of us are more excited than others, and that's okay. I think it's okay to be in different places for that. How are you doing with it?
Bring it on. I'm okay with it. I have ridden and enjoyed Splash Mountain for many years.
Yeah.
And my kids have enjoyed it. So, it would be one thing if I enjoyed it and I never got to share it with my lineage. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So for me, I'm okay with moving on. Plus, I'm also horribly biased because I just love Tiana and I love Princess and the Frog. I think it's such an underrated film. It's a great story about family. It's a great story about working towards your goals. It's a great story about the music is fantastic. It's got a beautiful story with Ray and Evangeline. There's some love in there. Great villain with Dr. Facilier. It's a masterpiece of like everything they did in there was so enjoyable. And on an animation standpoint, I love that they mixture a little bit of the 3D in there. It's a really unique process of the way that they built that one. So,
yeah,
Pirate Medallion.
I think that as long as they do it well and they don't do it halfway because of budgeting or whatever, as long as the Imagineers do it right, I'm okay with the change. If they kind of like do it cheaply with just like projections and not like actually doing stuff, I'm gonna be pretty upset. They're gonna make a lot of people.
Well, don't you feel that there's so much on this versus other ones? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like even so, like here's one that I think they did well. I think we all really enjoy Maelstrom, right? I think everybody enjoyed it at Epcot Maelstrom. Then you get the Frozen overlay. I thought that was beautifully done. We had a couple of unique things with like projection, audio animatronics. It's a great blend of a little bit of digital, but with a lot of still practical effects. And
Yeah.
it's not, it made sense. It's their biggest IP they've ever had in the Bob Iger years. So why not?
Yeah.
You know, I'm okay with
Yeah.
that. I loved Maelstrom, but like, I think Frozen is better for the parks. So
I know there's a lot of people that don't like IP in the parks. They don't, especially in Epcot. There's like a whole slew of people that are just like, this ruins it when you add in IP, which I don't know if I agree with that.
I think there's two things, right, when it comes to IP. One, it's what made you love Disney. So there's that. But two, it's really great when you can design park IP, right? So like Living with the Land doesn't have something that you could buy and enjoy to be like, I love Living with the Land. But it has its own park IP. Exactly. But Figment would be a great one where there's a character that was only built for an attraction that became such a cult classic hit, right? There's not a lot that really can do that when it comes to park ride specific IP. You know?
Yeah.
There's not many.
No, it's true. That's true.
I mean, Pirates, it's kind of interesting with Pirates because Pirates, the ride came before the IP. Do you know what I mean? So the ride beat the movies and inspired, which I thought was cool.
Well, then they tried to do that with a lot of other movies. Then it just didn't work like the Pirates did. Like Pirates was great. They did a good job with the first one at least.
Yep, it was great storyline. They melded it nicely with the attraction itself. I think their next shot at the Haunted Mansion will be very good. I thought Haunted Mansion Muppets was fantastic.
They did a good job with that one. Yeah.
Jungle Cruise, okay, so Jungle Cruise I thought was okay. I thought it was just okay. I didn't think it was horrible though.
I love
Jungle
Cruise. I think they did a great job with that.
I think for the way that they had and the characters that they chose to select and push forward, I thought it was fine. You know?
Well, they connected it a lot back to the African Queen. It was very similar to that in a lot of ways, which is what Jungle Cruise was inspired by. So, or at least one of the places it was inspired by. So I loved that because it was really like a romance, which was like, you know, but the ride itself doesn't have a romance as its central feature. So I think that might have been a disconnect there because that's not really what the ride's about. It's about funny jokes, right? Like, and animals and
it wasn't originally though. It was serious business.
It was. I listened to that record today in the car because I had a recording of it. And the kids are like, "What is this?" They're like, "This is not Jungle Cruise."
Yes, it is. Like, this is an informative. It's all about animals.
Kids.
Yeah.
Listen, kids, we're gonna learn. That's what Jungle Cruise is all about.
That's what it is.
Yeah, but anyway. Well, I know you got things to do in the parks there, and I don't want to keep you because I'll see you in a couple days anyway, and we'll chat.
You're not keeping me, and I'm looking forward to it because we hang out, but totally devoting like a couple of days is really nice. Like I'm very much looking forward to our crazy. I'm going to spend some time this weekend and write some more things that I've never done, and if they work with what you've never done. That would be awesome. I'm just really excited for that day because there's just a lot. It's so many firsts, and it's crazy. Like you would think, like you and I are in the parks all the time, so wouldn't we have done everything? We have not. So that's going to be exciting, and we're just a bunch of dorky people hanging out, and it's so fun because we do silly things like, wait, what's that? Like we just stare at stuff for a while. Yeah, there's lots of.
I don't know.
There's.
Clocks.
If you ever want to do knots and rope, that I got them for days in here. Knots and rope would be that's a lot. I don't want you to get tied up on a different subject. Oh, sorry. I don't know if that struck a chord with you. You know.
Oh, I have a whole list of things I need to see and take big pictures of and.
Oh, can you give us a little insight on, like, is there any that are thematically, you know, like your crates and clocks? Do you have a thematic one this time?
You know, I haven't written down my entire shot list yet, so I'll have to see if a theme pops up from it. I don't have something specifically yet, but I usually do that on my plane ride there, is when I kind of organize my thoughts about what I'm looking for. So I haven't done that yet. So
There's also lamps. I feel like lamps would be a good one.
I've done lamps.
Did you really?
I did that. That was like one of the first things I did when I started thinking about content creating, and then I never did it. I like literally took pictures of like every lamp in Disney.
Oh,
so I have them all somewhere.
You have them.
I have them, but I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do with this because they're just themed nicely to things. There's a couple ones that have things like the monkey chandelier that inspire the monkey in Pirates of the Caribbean and Disneyland. Like there's a couple ones that are attached to
the ones in Skipper Canteen are great.
Yeah, with
the parrot ones.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So there are a couple ones that like come from other things, but
I don't know. Honestly, I really think you need to bring that lamp, all that lamp content to light. That's just me personally.
I'll bring it out at the dark. Yes.
You always shine best when you talk about that, you know?
Oh my goodness.
Barrel
I
laps.
did see a question. Ghost at the Feast asked, do you think we'll only see rides based on movie IP going forward? That's a good question. Maybe. They really like
I don't think
tie
so.
things back to movies.
I don't think so, because, like, if you think about it, right, Cosmic Rewind wasn't going to happen. It was originally called the Big Bang Roller Coaster. So, like, it wasn't a Guardians ride at first. And it wasn't until they got some licensing rights to be able to do it. But otherwise, that was going to be just a start of the world. No, I know, but it didn't.
So I think that's.
Yeah, but that was like, yeah. I don't know. What's what else did they build? Tron is IP.
Madame Leota's,
but that's already.
So we can look into the future and see.
But she's a charlatan. You can't trust her. She doesn't know anything.
People start to materialize after that, so you know.
It's true. It's true. I would love. It's, you know what? The only way that kind of stuff gets built is if they do a new park. Because then they can be creative on two other ways, right? Like where if it's just like a new ride, there's less excitement. But if it's a new park and you don't know what you're getting, do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
so.
I mean, I can't think of a single thing that they have made recently that wasn't IP.
It's all IP.
You know, Victoria says Tron. We've got, or she said Remy. I'm thinking Tron. Like I'm thinking like
Mickey and Minnie's for you guys.
Minnie's, like everything new. Tiana, it's all IP. I feel like. I hate to say this, but I feel like the days of them just kind of inventing something new for the parks is almost gone. And that's sad to say that because I feel like there's so much like Disney Plus. They've also got now the whole Star Wars universe. They've got like all this IP that they've acquired that like why would they need to invent something new? So they invent.
Yeah, but time out.
At movies, they do the inventing at movies.
Time out.
What?
Time out. I disagree with you with Galaxy's Edge. I can agree that Rise of the Resistance leans on Star Wars IP, and so does Smuggler's Run. But you're getting completely new storylines. You get 2 full books. You get multiple comics, and the actual physical planet didn't exist. So they like had to make up a planet. So to me, making up a planet, Oga Gara wouldn't have existed. Like there are, I know we don't see her, but still, like there, to me. You could talk about Strono Cookie Tugs and Docking Bay 7. Like, there are things that exist within that space. Every single one of those stalls has a backstory. So, to me, I don't know. I know it's in Star Wars still, but that's still for the parks. Like, those Star Wars stories wouldn't exist if it wasn't for the parks.
I mean, you could make that argument, too, for the Jungle Cruise overhaul that they did, and they changed the story with Alberta Falls, and they added her, although it was related to the original storyline, but they did add new characters and roles.
Yeah, see, I would agree with that.
So there is some of that. So you could say that they make up some new stories to go with the IP. So that is creative in itself, that they're making kind of some new stories, but they are attached to the IP.
Yeah. I mean, that's Jackie's point too, and I understand and appreciate that. I think that's fair, but I don't know.
Yeah, expanding existing IP. Yeah, that's what I'm.
Yeah, it's more of that than brand spanking new.
I feel like all of their new creative ideas really come in with their movies. Like it's all Disney Plus and movies right now is
Yeah.
where all their creative stuff is happening. And the parks is like, and then the parks is the place they like put those things to like market them, which sounds awful because I love the parks, but I was just
Yeah,
like,
but that's
you know,
that's been a huge part of the parks since inception is to push
yeah.
and sell things. Do you know what I mean?
For sure. That's like the castle they named Sleeping Beauty Castle because they knew it was going to come out soon. And
Yeah.
they're like, let's push this movie by making
Yeah.
this castle this name. So, yeah, it's always been that way.
Yep.
It's not new. Yeah, for sure. I agree with that. So, yeah. And Moana, yeah, Moana's IP too. Everything new. But that's kind of what the people want. I feel like what they're doing is giving people kind of what they think they want in some ways. You know, they're like, the kids recognize this and then they get to go here and see it like come to life. And I respect that that's something they're doing because they believe that's what the people really want to see.
I think I appreciate that. I think that's good.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. Interesting discussion.
Tune in next week for more of this because that's what it'll be.
It'll just be us. Yeah,
it'll just be us chatting and saying hello.
I want to think about something really fun that we can do because we've never done Distory in the parks together ever.
Yeah.
Like, we've been in the parks together, but never Distory. So I'm going to we got to think about that. It'll be fun. So.
Yeah, I don't have a good answer for that yet.
I'll do some thinking. We got that long plane ride. Be great.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Well, I'm gonna let you go. I'm gonna go. I still got.
Thank you for sharing your amazing epicness of Haunted Mansion before this. If you're listening to this audio, you missed a doozy. Go listen to the other Haunted Mansion episodes because Kate took us in the parks and listened to Haunted Mansion. I could listen to that all day, every day. You might actually want to release that as like a secondary, like a B. That's the B side of this podcast because it is great. It's so good. It's so good. And Mesa, phenomenal. I got to get those books now. I got to get those Marc Davis books. They are too cool.
Yeah, they're not cheap. They're an investment. So I think it's like $75 or something. They're not cheap, but they're worth it.
That's okay. We can. We got to find an interlibrary loan and then disappear for a while. Just kidding. Don't do that. I love libraries.
No, return your library books.
Yes, return your. Dude, it's weird. Our library, they don't do late fees anymore. They're like, we just don't do them. I'm like, well, what does that even mean? You just keep the book? They're like, yeah, we don't do anything. I'm like, well, there's no repercussions.
I know. There's always that urgency.
I don't get it.
I got to get it back, or it's going to be like 10
Yeah,
cents
it's
a
going to be late. It's going to be late. You know? Yeah, that's how I feel.
It makes me feel better though, because my kids lose theirs all the time.
And this would be a great time to say we're also celebrating yet again. What happened? What happened on Amazon? Is anything happening? I don't know. What's the latest?
Yeah.
Kate's published.
Yeah, I did publish a book on Amazon that's called A Glimpse of the Magic, Finding Ourselves in the Disney Story. It's in my suitcase, so I can't go get it. But it is a book, it's very much like the content I make in that it is inspiration that's also tied with a little bit of Disney history. So it's kind of a way of how we explore how the Disney parks impact us personally. It's a collection of writings and poems that I made. And it is #1 new release on Amazon in the ebook format, which is kind of fun that it's #1. Woo! So thank you to all Pocket Fam friends who made that possible, because that really was all of you guys doing that, not me. So I really appreciate all of you getting it, all of you reading it, all of the really amazing reviews that you have left. I'm honestly, like, I read those and I'm like crying a little bit, because it's so scary to put your work out there, and to see that it's impacting people's lives in a positive way is all the reward I will ever need in my whole life. So thank you.
Yeah. Well, I can say we are all a big fan.
How long were you waiting to say that?
So long. You have no idea. I wanted to say it the entire time.
Thank you, everyone. Yes, and so you can get both the paperback version and the electronic version on Amazon. It's also available on Barnes & Noble, Apple Books, Google Play, and Kobo. So lots of places where you get books. It's available if you're interested. And it's in my link in my bio. So.
And if you know where Kate is, Bring your book and make her sign it. I'm going to make you sign by your picture. And you have to write, "It's me."
It's me.
I'm going to get a picture of you signing it just so I have provenance to show that you existed and you signed it. So just in case, if I need to hawk it for money, you know, when you're like big time on.
Thank you. It doesn't make a difference, Victoria, if you
right.
paper or Kindle. Either one's fine. And yes, thank you, Bridget. I see that. Thank you. Sign his forehead. They want me to sign your forehead, just like Kate Grasso right across your forehead. No.
She can.
Thank you.
She can.
Thank you. I see that, Bree. Thank you. I'm blown away that all of you guys have ordered the book and enjoying the book. Just thank you. Thank you, everybody.
We did.
Yeah. But well, let's do a little ending, and then I'll jet, and you guys can do all your park goodness there. But thank you everybody for joining us for Distory tonight for this really amazing discussion of a ride that we wish had happened but never was, Western River Expedition, and also for some discussion about some other Disney things as well. It's always a great conversation with you guys. And I will be in the Disney parks this next week, and Kirk will be there too, so we can hang out with us. We will see you then. Thank you, Kirk, for being our legs, walking us around, and our eyes, showing us the park while we did all the things.
Yes,
it was
no
actually
problem.
really lovely to hear all the sounds in the background. I know it's like I joke about it being an audio nightmare, but it's actually quite fun to hear all the park sounds. So, thank you.
Yeah, you know, it's like I used to do back in the day, the Parkmospheres. People love them. Seriously, people still listen to Parkmospheres. Like they just pop on and listen to the rides, which I still do.
But what don't you do, really? Like,
I don't do anything. I'm dancing right now to keep warm.
oh my gosh. Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to say goodnight. I will see you all later, and I'll be in Florida when I do. So stay warm, Kirk.
All right. Safe trip, and see you next week.
Yeah. Bye. See ya.
All right. See you, dude. Hello.